Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen, a show on the Iconic Production channel where we hang out, we talk about games, we talk about game reviews, board games, role-playing games, game design, adventure design, just things that inspire us about gaming, and more things that inspire beauty in our lives and in our games. So today we're continuing the argument for alignment, and I have a special guest, a friend of the show. Hey, Grom and John, good to see both of you this morning. This is let me introduce him. All right, the transition is all working. This is a good friend, recent friend. We have become collaborators on Discord and chatting about things that we love. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you, JM. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm glad that you were willing to jump on and chat about this with me. In fact, because a lot of this discussion came from discussions I was having with Richard and with Ben and with you. So I was like, well, why not just bring Matt on the show and uh, talk about alignment. So before we get into it, you have your own YouTube channel. You want to talk
Yes.
about your YouTube channel? You want to talk about your experience with gaming, kind of your bona fides, so to speak?
Sure. I mean, first of all, I'm going to apologize for the light a little bit because the sunshine is cracking through in Colorado.
Oh, I
So,
miss
um,
Colorado.
and that's actually the ironic thing. We connected, I think, via the Exploring Glorantha and then the Grand Campaign and then Discord not too long after you actually left the Springs.
Yeah.
So it was kind of funny. So I have a YouTube channel, Game Master Matt, where recently, I would say within the last 2 months, I made a transition. Before that, I was doing strategy video games and decided to move that over into tabletop role playing games discussions just because a lot of the strategy video games I was doing just weren't. I just wasn't enjoying it that much. I think a lot of them have become diluted and not that great. And so I figured I would go with tabletop role playing games as that's a bigger passion of mine and focus more on that. So it's still trying to figure out what the channel is going to be in that space between GM advice, game reviews, old school D&D or new school stuff. We'll see.
Well, I've enjoyed a lot of your. Sorry, I was decided to make one change. As we all know, making changes while things are live is never recommended. Um,
No.
so I've enjoyed the videos you've had so far. In fact, in talking with you, I was like, well, I was going to do this video, you're going to do this video, and you're like, we should both do this video. And so the Death
There
and
you go.
Agency, you got a video up. I'm going to put links in the show notes after this when it goes live on YouTube so that you guys can go over and check out Matt's channel. I love his takes on things. Um, Morning, Mark. I think you guys would all enjoy it as well. John Doom says welcome to you, Matt.
Thank
So
you.
thanks for
Thank you.
so we've been talking about an argument for alignment, and we've done two episodes of it. We've done where alignment came from and why it's important and why it's a foundational mechanic again to D20 gaming, right? This is not, if we're playing Savage Worlds, alignment really doesn't, come into things. If you're playing Symbaroum, which I know you're running, alignment doesn't really come into things. But
Correct.
games based off of the D20 epic heroic fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, Castles and Crusades, OSE, all of these games, alignment's still in there, and it's one of those mechanics that I think is why I'm doing this argument for alignment, that we're far enough removed from what it was intended for, and right around third edition, D&D became self-referential, right? Even as late as second edition,
Hmm.
the examples they give in the player's handbook are like, hey, play a fighter if you want to be Beowulf or Hiawatha, or be a
Yep.
paladin if you want to be one of Charlemagne's knights. And you get to third, and all of the references are D&D references, right? You look at the fifth edition book, and your example character is one of R.A. Salvatore's characters. And it's become enough of a self-referential thing that if we don't take a look at why these components are, we're tempted to remove them and just throw them out, which in my opinion, that's what we're going to be talking about on Tuesday. Things break down if you just throw alignment out of the game. A lot
Hmm.
of the core assumptions of the world we're playing in, spells, monsters, special abilities, class abilities, they just break if you remove alignment.
Correct.
What are your thoughts on that? And today we're going to be talking about how to use alignment as GMs and game masters, which
Yeah.
applies to a ton of different games, because you can put these axiomatic uh, breaks in your game world to kind of draw a dividing line on sides. I did it with Jackals. Law and chaos are the two opposing alignments in Jackals. But I've been rambling enough. What are your thoughts on alignment as a game master?
Well, I think the original design of alignment. So we're going back to, original D&D where you basically had law, chaos, and neutrality.
Hmm.
Um, I preferred that because the way it's described is you are aligned, you are
Hmm.
allied with
Yeah.
one of these entities.
Hmm.
And you can be allied with law, still be kind of a jerk. You can be allied with neutrality and still be a little bit good. But if you're allied with the forces of chaos, you're not. I mean, it's more a Warhammer take on it. And
Yeah.
Warhammer chaos is bad. In RuneQuest and Glorantha, chaos is bad. Where it got tricky is once you had the 9 alignment system and you had degrees of chaos.
Hmm.
Now people go, well, chaos can be good, right? I'm like, well, yes, in modern D&D it can.
Yeah. 100%.
There it more has to do with societal structure rather than how you view the world
Hmm.
in that sense, like who you're allied with.
Exactly.
That's one thing about a game that obviously you brought to my attention, 13th Age, that I like about the icons. To me, icons are the alignment in the
Yeah.
world in that degree. Who are you allied with? It's probably a simpler way to understand it
Yeah.
versus the nebulous term. I like it from a GM perspective because um, it makes it easy for players to understand then which way something's going, and for yourself as a GM you understand it, and it's a tool if you're running a D&D genre type
Hmm.
game where you can kind of remind players, well, if you do this you can do that. Obviously you can do whatever you want, however that isn't in accordance with your alignment of your character.
Right.
And obviously this becomes a major issue with paladins, with lawful
Clerics.
good, clerics,
Hmm.
druids being
Yeah.
true neutral, things like that. Historically, rangers.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you have to be this subset of alignments. I don't know when it happened. I don't know. It was just 3.5. I never really did much with fourth or fifth edition, where now all of a sudden you can be a paladin. You don't have to be lawful good.
Yeah. So I think, all right, so first of all, John brought up a good point. He's saying he thinks that character alignment seems to matter less as players get older. The youth has the more murder hobo. So I'm
Hmm.
assuming what John's saying is that the alignment provides the guidelines for the murder hoboing when you're younger, and when you get older, you just want to play the hero. And I think
Yeah.
to some degree that helps reinforce this kind of, and we talked about this the last episode. It enforces our desire to reenact, to be the hero, to look at these stories and get the recovery and the escape, as Tolkien would have put it, that we like. And I think we talked about with Savage Worlds, right? The default assumption, even in Necessary Evil, is that you guys actually are the good guys. You are maybe you're the anti-hero, but you're not the bad guys. And yeah, going back to the roots of the hobby, right? Lawful was, hey, you're defending the people who gather in groups and the civilizations as you see it, right? And again, right, the civilizations in the original D&D were humans, elves, dwarves, and halflings, right? Sometimes gnomes. I could take gnomes or leave them. Mark knows my feelings on gnomes. But it was the people who built, who had civilizations in the modern in the current era, common era, I
Yeah.
think is how we would
Yeah.
describe it now. But you had the influences of things again like Elric, Law versus Chaos, where things got a little bit more muddied. I think it was, I mean, pretty early on, you had the anti-paladin, which
Hmm.
was the villain, right? If you had lawful evil, you had lawful good, you had lawful evil. Dragonlance, I think, with the Knights of Takhisis, really kind of looked at this idea of, well, hey, why doesn't evil have? And I think I would actually argue that maybe Dragonlance has a very simple 3 point alignment system as well, but theirs is good, neutral, and evil as opposed to law, neutral,
Law.
and
Yeah.
chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think that probably explains it better
yeah,
than law, neutrality, and chaos. Because it was very early. I mean, it's AD&D
yeah,
20, where all of a sudden you had multiple alignments, and it was always said every elf is chaotic.
yeah.
Which in my brain, in my Tolkien-esque brain, I'm like,
Doesn't
no,
make
elves are
sense.
like the definition of
That's right.
lawful.
Yeah. Have
I
you
mean, these
read?
are societal norms, ultra structured
Yeah,
types of peoples. So that was just always one that kind of threw me, but I went with it.
yeah. I
It
think again that pulls right out of
Yeah,
Three Hearts, Three Lions by Paul Anderson, where the elves are
right.
chaotic. Like the elves are on the side of chaos.
It's a fairy tale elf. I
Yeah.
mean, doing a lot with German folklore and mythology, elves are troublemakers in
Hmm.
German folklore and mythology and fairy tales. And so it makes sense in that sense. But, I mean, just Tolkien has just that
Yeah.
lasting impression of what an
Hmm.
elf is in my
Well,
head.
even if you go to medieval, the medieval mindset where they're trying to find a place for everything, right? You have angelic beings on the lawful side or the good side, if
Hmm.
you will, those who remained loyal during the Great Rebellion. You have the demons, which are clearly the chaotic evil side. And then they created this whole sphere for things like the Fae. These were angels that remained neutral and therefore were cast out of heaven but not into hell, and they are
Yeah.
bound to the earth. And you can clearly see where this idea of being bound to creation until the end of the world, that's a very Tolkien-esque view of elves as well, right? He took the elves from the medieval mindset, and kind of
Yeah.
reinvented them. All right, so sometimes and just as a side note, I think fifth edition tried to pull it, or fourth edition tried to pull it back, right? They went to a 5 alignment scale.
Yeah.
It was lawful good, good, neutral, evil, and chaotic evil. I've had many talks with Rob about this, and there were reasons for it. I think there was a desire to go back to the 3 alignment system, but after several decades of the nine, how do you
Yeah.
9 alignments, nine alignments given to mortal men doomed to die. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, I prefer kind of the simpler 3 point alignment system. But some people may accuse. So the two big complaints I see when we're talking about alignment are either it's overly simplistic, an overly simplistic morality,
Hmm.
um, or we could just remove it and it doesn't change anything about the game. So let's talk about overly simplistic. I feel like there's a ton of
Yeah.
shades of gray in there, right? Especially if you do lawful, neutral, and chaos, right? Lawful actively fight for the benefit of civilization. They can be good or evil, fighting, the methodology of the side they agree with is where you get the shades of good and evil. Neutral, they enjoy the benefits, but that's as far as their connection to civilization goes. And chaos is, hey, we want to reduce everything to the strong survive, and there can be shades of gray in there as well. Maybe, yeah, I think hold on, 49, 48, 49, yeah, about 50 shades of gray John Doom in the alignment system. I think we've now just been flagged by some YouTube algorithm. What are your thoughts as a GM when you're planning a campaign, when you're engaging with alignment? Do you see it as super simple? How do you add um, gradations to a 3 point alignment system?
So in the 3 point alignment system, so I run old school essentials, which is BX, which is 3 point alignment system. And I had to explain that to a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old actually last weekend.
Nice.
And for them, it made perfect sense. I said, neutral, you don't go either way. You are essentially more like my son's playing a druid, and like you're neutral, true neutrality. Neutral is more nature,
Mm-hmm.
lawful is more society,
Mm-hmm.
chaos is just evil. I mean, it is essentially
Yeah.
evil. It is the destruction of both nature and the corruption thereof of nature and society,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how that society is structured. Uh,
Interesting.
whether it's whether it's in something as structured as, gosh, I don't know, the empire in the old world
Yeah.
of Warhammer, or just individual little hamlets in the Cron Hills of Greyhawk, of
Right.
Gnomish. Those are still societies. They may
Yeah.
be more
Or the
neutral,
points
they
of
may be
light
more
in
lawful.
fourth edition, or even
Correct.
how fifth
Yeah.
edition is kind of structured, right? The societies are these points of light that are,
Yeah. Correct.
yeah.
And chaos is more about getting rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very, I draw a lot in from Warhammer Old World because
Mm-hmm.
chaos is there to destroy that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily bring up its own world order. It doesn't even know what to do when it has destroyed things,
Right.
as we see with what Games Workshop did with the old world. When it
And
was
yeah, Age of
destroyed, it was like,
Sigmar. I was just thinking that.
okay, Age of Sigmar, which is, you could argue, is like the ultimate chaos setting,
Yeah.
um, with very tiny points of light within it, or even 40K,
Yeah.
even worse. But for me as a GM, it gives me structure to understand how to run NPCs, how to run environments, and obviously if you're playing a D&D genre game, and for that I include OSR
Mm-hmm.
games, old school D&D, 5th edition, Pathfinder, 13th
Yep.
Age,
Castles and
anything that is,
Crusades.
yes, anything that is based upon that D&D framework from Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, is that you need alignment because so much is tied to it.
Mm-hmm.
Inner relationships between ancestries, races, whatever you want to call them, kingdoms, magic is directly tied to it. If you look at reversible spells, if you look at how turn undead works, which, can we please bring turn undead back to D&D? Because I
Yeah.
feel like in 5th edition, it's a, an afterthought, whereas in old school, that's like the only thing you can do as a cleric at first level. Um, it, those things matter to the mechanics of the game
Mm-hmm.
deeply. Because obviously, if you are evil, turn undead becomes control undead.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're good, you don't control the undead, you destroy the undead.
Yeah.
And the only way to mechanically codify that is through an alignment system. Reversible spells, it's the same way. If you are lawful in OSE or BX, you almost never use the reversible version of a spell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it says basically no,
Yeah.
don't do it, because it could change your alignment. And obviously that has massive effects because you could lose a level, a paladin who's no longer lawful good, or a ranger who's no longer good. They just become a fighter,
Yeah.
sometimes at the same level, sometimes a lower level, and then they have to quest to come back. A
Yeah.
druid just basically becomes a cleric, a specialty priest in
Yeah.
second edition. So it's important from a mechanical standpoint the way Dungeons and Dragons genre games are structured. Whether or not players lean into that these days, having played with people who've only played 5th edition or Pathfinder 2nd edition or 1st edition, and people who've played older games, the newer ones, it is a massive afterthought.
Yeah. So,
Um,
if I may interrupt real quick, Restar said two good points. One, wanting to hack and slash everything should restrict your alignment choices, and it does. Like I
Yeah.
think it very clearly restricts your alignment choices. Now, this thing on chaos being disorder, that is something that we see when we go to a 9 alignment system because they're trying to figure out how to take this and change it. So in the 3-part alignment system, I don't think chaos can be just disorder or just selfishness. I think that's where neutral is. I think chaos as in a 3-part alignment system is very clearly something that wants to just see the dissolution of the world. It's a very aha, it's me talking, so of course I'm going to go here. It's a very Bronze Age, ancient Near East look at the world. Now, I've seen a lot of people ask questions about, well, it doesn't port to other game systems or worlds. One, true. Like, I mean, if you squint at Star Wars, you can kind of come up with a 3-point alignment system. You have those aligned with the Force, those aligned with the dark side, but you get a lot, right? Because you have essentially the rebels are chaos versus Star Wars needs the 9-point alignment system. But when you look at things, even games that don't have alignment systems, and I'm looking right at you, Restar, and I'm going to talk about your favorite game right now, Torg. When you look at Isle, which is the heroic fantasy inspired Cosm, you have light and darkness. That is essentially our 3-point alignment system. You have people who are overly heavily aligned with the light. You have people who don't care. And you have people who are heavily aligned with the darkness. Even in, if you want to step back, you could say the 3-point alignment in Torg is possibility versus void, with most of the people kind of falling in the middle, not really caring or being involved in the possibility war. So I think this idea of establishing two extremes in a setting and then a fulcrum in the middle of neutrality gives us some good boundaries to play and create a world in.
Yeah, I mean, even in games like two of my favorite ones, Warhammer Fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
role play,
I
now
love
fourth
that game.
edition, and Symbaroum. They have a very similar alignment or morality system, if
Mm-hmm.
we call it that. You have chaotic corruption
Mm-hmm.
and then everything else. I mean, you have literally 1,000 shades of gray and then blackness.
Mm-hmm.
And once you and everyone understands in those worlds that when you take that step into that corrupted chaos, you're fair game to be killed. You need to be annihilated. You are forces of demonic evil, and you must be destroyed. Even in you look at the old world or you look at the Symbaroum setting. I mean, it's a setting full of gentlemen bastards in that
Mm-hmm.
sense. If I can just take from a great book,
Oh yeah, Lies of Locrimora,
um,
just a great series.
or First Law,
Mm-hmm.
another one. Um,
Right, as soon as you become an
because
eater,
yeah, yeah, it's pretty bad.
you've
It's just
crossed
bad.
you've crossed the threshold, and that's I think that's where the shades of gray are in all of the alignment systems. If you don't want to be aligned with one side or the other, neutrality is where your shades of gray truly
Yes.
exist. 1,000 shades of gray.
Yeah, and that's if we then port that back to 9 alignments because it's the dominant
Mm-hmm.
version because it's based on D&D and it's the dominant game. Um, if you look at even the differentiations in evil in how you play them as a GM,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at an instance like my favorite setting, of course, Greyhawk, you look at the Scarlet Brotherhood, that is lawful evil personified. It is a racist, fascist, I mean it's medieval Nazis.
Yeah.
And that is the definition of lawful evil. If you then go to the world of traditional Forgotten Realms Menzoberranzan,
Mm-hmm.
the Drow, as Salvatore wrote them originally, that is chaotic evil. They have a structured society to a degree, but they will knife each other in the dark. I mean, it starts that way.
Yeah. It starts
The
with
whole
a mass. Yeah.
mass killing of a house. So it is pure chaos. but it is evil. Those are two different ways. The Scarlet Brotherhood would never eat itself; it wants to eat others.
Right.
Whereas the downfall of the Drow was always they would eat themselves,
It's
and therefore they couldn't eat others.
the perfect chaotic civilization in my mind when I think of it this way is from Memories of Ice in the Malazan series.
Hmm.
The um, the cannibals, the ones who just burn everything else out as they keep
Okay.
expanding.
Yep.
Can't remember the name of that. Anyway, it'll come to me at the weirdest time and I'll post it on the Discord server. So Restart asks, are the gods above label? Is God smiting lawful good no matter the destruction? And I think Restart, the thing how I would put it is the gods are the absolute embodiment of their alignment. They have shades of personality, but Corellian is the embodiment of chaotic good. Moradin is the embodiment of lawful good. What happens where the interest, so they are going to act according to their alignment. When they smite something, they are going to smite something for lawful or chaotic good reasons, not out of petty vengeances. Where we get the interesting thing is the fact that all of the mortal races have free will. So you are aligned with Corellin, but you're not always going to act the way Corellin wants you to, and that's where the play comes from. Also, as a as a GM, I think alignment is, as Matt was just pointing out, a great shorthand for how am I going to play this NPC. I've never been a fan of the chaotic neutral alignment. Sorry, Tink. As a I'm going to roll randomly for what I do. Am I going to knife you? Am I
Yeah.
going to kiss you? Am I going to, steal your money, steal your pants, give you my pants? These are all examples that I have written down as things that chaotic neutral characters have done.
Well, there's a reason why it is also referred to as CA. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to say what the A stands
Yeah.
for. I think we all know what the chaotic A means, because that's how a lot of people lean into it. And it's getting to the point when I have run in a 5e campaign, which I ended a nearly 2-year one just a few months ago, which will probably be the last time I run 5e. Where I told players, new players came in, I want to be chaotic neutral. I said, no.
Yeah.
You are as akin, it's not that you are evil, because I don't allow evil characters, at least not in that campaign. You you can be disruptive. I to me to play, it's like I tell people when they say, "Oh, I want to play evil," I say you need to be an incredibly good player to pull that off. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't understand Raistlin as a character
It's hard
from
to pull off.
Dragonlance,
Yeah.
you can't play an evil character. And it requires the same maturity to play chaotic neutral. It is akin to someone saying, I'm going to play a Kender in Dragonlance and just steal from people all the time. It's like, no, they are not thieves. They are inadvertent kleptomaniacs.
Yes.
It is not to be disruptive. It is just a quirk. If you can't play it as a quirk and you play it as disruptive, it doesn't work in the game, because then it just leads to frustration.
And I think for most, when I'm reading in the chat, because we have a lot of people who clearly identify as chaotic, what I'm seeing is really though it's neutral. Your neutrality is you are in it for yourself, and I would argue that like I would agree with you, Restar. I've seen you play chaotic neutral in some of our tour games, and you do a great job of reading the people's faces and going, cool. Now I'm going to pull back. Okay, now is the time where I can be, a little bit more selfish and a little bit more wild. But on the 3-point alignment system or even the 9-point alignment system, really the neutral column is the people who see everything in the world of I am the center of this world. What else, how does everything else spill out around me? The lawful good alignments is about us. Chaos neutral is about me, and the evil ones take that selfishness to a um, well, to use a political term, move from the libertarian view, which is the neutrality view, into what can, I'm actually actively willing to hurt everyone around me for my own goals, my own gain, my own. And so that's where the difference for me in neutral chaos or neutral evil split. It goes beyond selfishness to the point of everything else in the world is fair game to stab, rook, to take from, right? Because even a neutral character, even when you guys are like, well, I like playing chaotic neutral, there are lines as a neutral character, chaotic neutral character, that are beyond the pale for you. Once those lines go away, that's where chaos evil really lives.
Yeah, and I would say it as, because those are to me the two hardest, or the hardest alignments to pull off, are those right down the middle neutral, lawful
Mm-hmm.
neutral, true neutral, chaotic neutral. Um, that's why I always never liked the druid, because I just found the ultra neutral balance must always be is like, well, how do you do that? So to achieve balance, will you kill a good person because that's one too many good people in the world?
Yeah. Well, I like your
You
take on it,
know?
where true neutral is the natural world,
Yeah.
right? Because in a 3 point alignment system, society, nature, destruction makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can kind of deviate whichever way you want. I always look at it as chaotic neutral as ultimate selfishness.
Hmm.
Ultimate selfishness. But not to the point where, you're gonna kill someone in their sleep because you just kind of want their trinkets. Because
Yeah.
then you're chaotic evil.
Yeah. Exactly.
For me, I've always maintained that people play paladins incorrectly.
Okay. The Panny and Doman.
Because,
That was the name of the thing I was thinking of.
okay.
Sorry, I knew it was going to come to me in the middle, and I would just blurt it out.
So I've always had people play paladins, lawful good, ultra dogmatic. And I said, no, you are not ultra dogmatic. Yes, you are aligned with this god, and you fulfill their tenets and so on, but you are kind. You are the personification of 15th century French chivalric code.
Yes.
You will go out of your way to be ultimately kind.
Hmm.
But if bad people do bad things to good people,
That's when
you
you
won't
step in.
think you won't think twice about
Yeah.
killing them. But you will not kill someone who's tied up, because it goes against a chivalric code in
Yeah.
that sense.
I love that about the Palladium alignment system,
Mm,
where, and actually, I would even say second edition Pathfinder does this very well, where instead of saying you're lawful good and that's it, it gives you this, hey, here are the actions that someone who is principled, in riffs, Savage Riffs, John Doom plays a cyber knight. He is sort of a rock star kind of a character, uh, pretty chill, pretty gregarious, outgoing. But here are the things that a cyber knight will and won't do, and it really is about, hey, I'm going to protect those who can't protect themselves. It's not lawful to the exclusion of good. It is
correct.
good tempered with the understanding of society. And I
Yeah.
think that's a good way to put at it.
The For me, people who play paladins as ultimate dogmatic, they're playing lawful neutral.
Yes, exactly.
I've got a Castles and Crusades campaign, and we of course have a cleric of Saint Cuthbert. Saint Cuthbert is the personification of lawful neutral. He is ultra dogmatic
Mm-hmm.
and will stick to the dogma teachings of Saint Cuthbert to a T, come what may.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone who gets in the way, regardless of good or bad or whoever, will be moved out of the
Out of the
way
way, exactly.
with the mace.
Yeah.
And that is how I feel like too many people have played paladins. And that's why people say I don't like paladins, because they're just so ultra dogmatic. And I'm like, no, they have a code. At the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
Jedi's. The Jedi
Restart.
Knight is a lawful good character.
Yeah, 100%. He Restart, just he's like the passion of the knight sways him from the neutrality. Yes, 100%. Um, I do like it in Path, because we're talking about a bunch of different games. I do like it in Pathfinder 2 that they're like, hey, let's call it the champion, and let's give the three different lawfuls, or the three different goods,
Yeah.
different orders. Okay, I'm fine with that. Like I think that's a great way to look at it. And I think they did in one of the later books, they gave the three different evils and the three different neutralities their own, like there's like nine different champion specs out there. So, well, Matt, thanks for coming on and talking about this. I
Yeah.
love
I
hanging
hope I
out and
wasn't too
chatting.
rambly.
No, not at all. Like, I mean, have you seen behind the screen? That's basically just me rambling and interacting with the chat. At least now there were two voices to ramble. All right, let's see here. Tink said, um, okay, hold on. Yes, so one of the iconics, Grom said one of the iconics in 3.0 was neutral, only interested in magic. Nothing else mattered. But the gaining, yeah, that's a great example. Tink said, can chaotic neutral characters' motivations be indifference, not self-interest? I don't think there's anything chaotic about indifference. I think indifference is true neutral. Like, is one way of playing true neutral. Chaotic neutral definitely is that I'm in it for, what in any given situation, what is the best thing for me and me alone? And again, with lines they won't cross. Because like if you just are like, ooh, that window looks awesome, there's something shiny, I'm gonna climb up there and steal the shiny thing, that's chaotic neutral. If you get up there and you're like, oh, there's somebody sleeping in the bed, let me stab them and kill them to make sure that they don't know that I'm taking their stuff. Yeah, it's chaotic evil. Like, right.
Yeah. Logan, Nine Fingers from First Law, first book,
Yeah.
is kind of in that chaotic neutral, bouncing up and down
Yeah.
between good, neutral, and evil.
Bloody Nine is definitely chaotic evil.
Yes. And then
Logan Nine
occasionally he'll be
Fingers,
good.
yeah,
So we'll call it neutral. And
yeah. Split the difference.
yeah.
Well, Matt, thanks for coming on and hanging out and talking. If you guys liked what Matt was saying, he's got his own YouTube channel. You should go over and check it out. I'll put links in the show notes to it.
Thank you much.
What are some new other topics that you have scheduled for coming up?
Um, I'm trying to remember now. I am gonna do more of a deep dive into Symbaroum,
Cool.
both in how to play and then the setting. So that's one of the big attractions. Um, a little bit more on Castles and Crusades, and then just general game design stuff. Some
Awesome.
stuff I'm working on with Old School Essentials, how to throw Merkborg into your OSE game.
And you just released
And
a free class for OSE, right?
yes,
Awesome.
yes, I did.
You want to talk a little bit about that before we sign
Yeah,
off here?
so it's on my blog. Link will be on my channel if you go there,
Yeah.
or
I'll
on
put a
Twitter.
link in the show notes as well.
Um, and it's a confessor class, and in this setting that I'm building for Old School Essentials, it's a basically a different take on a cleric. It is a cleric that basically needs a spell book to cast from, so it's taking magic user mechanics, throwing it into the cleric. They can't turn undead, but they need their prayer book to speak their prayers, which are spells,
Yeah.
just using general, and they can detect evil a number of times a day per level because they are confessors. They will look at people and go confess, and they
Yeah.
can tell if they're evil or not, and they can do a little bit of healing
Okay.
as
I got to
well
look at it. I
once
think
per
it's a
day.
great. I think it's a great class. Real interesting to play. Adds some new space to explore a world with. So hopefully
Yes,
we'll see more.
yes,
All right. Well, that's it for today. On Tuesday, we'll be back talking about. We're going to wrap up the argument for alignment, kind of what breaks down when we pull alignment out of the game system, and then we're going to start a series on Savage Worlds. If you are a member of the Iconic Patronage, jump over to the Behind the Screen channel on our Discord and tell me what you want to see kind of ripped apart and looked at with Savage Worlds. Tink and Rook gave me a ton of great ideas, and so we're going to talk Savage Worlds for the next month or so, kind of looking at different rules mechanics, how to build adventures, how to get published for Savage Worlds. They have a real generous licensing policy, which I'm kind of in the point of contact for. So I figured why not talk a little bit more about that. And then we'll be back. We're off on this Tuesday from Crucible, but we'll be back in 2 weeks with Crucible. So you're welcome. John says, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Jam. Always, John. Always glad to have you in here. To everybody, Restar and Grom and Mark and Tink, thanks for joining us. Matt, thanks for joining. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Hopefully, we'll get to do these again. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I'm JM. This has been Behind the Screen. We'll see you all on Tuesday. Have a good one.